Now, as a congressman, you could rename that road, couldn't you, or what?
Do you really want to rename it? I mean, think of the flavor of it. I mean, there is a cement plant out there.
Sure there is.
There's actually a stoplight there at that intersection.
There is.
Enchilada. It seems to me that I'd like to keep it a cement plant road.
It's interesting when you look at the names of the roads, though, in the valley. Like Rural Road was because it was a rural road, or Bethany Home was because there was a Bethany Home, or an Indian school. A road is called because there was an Indian school on the road.
Celeste and I were prepping for the interview, and we're like, what can we get him on the record about?
Let's talk about Cement Plant Road.
The whole Cement Plant Road controversy.
If there isn't one now, you've created it. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So this is really interesting because we've kind of become the forum for Arizona for candidates. You've been here before. David Schweikert has been here before. The governor has been here on multiple occasions. So it's a good opportunity for us to really dig into more of these issues.
Right.
Let's do this. Let's start. I'm going to roll this. I believe we have it labeled here as SOT 4. David Schweikert was on just the other day, and let's get right into it because
Am I listening to this?
Go ahead, put
yeah.
those things on.
All right.
Can you hear okay?
Can you hear Celeste's voice?
Or do you need us to boost the volume?
No.
Here's the volume
okay.
for you.
It's probably good.
All right, good.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Is your opponent, Andy Biggs, too extreme to win over independent voters like you have?
Yes. Look, I've known Mr. Biggs most of my life.
Are you besties?
No. But look, he had a district that was overwhelmingly, Republican. Mm-hmm. I've always been in a district where I'm very conservative, and I have to fight like hell every election because, and I'm the Democrats' most expensive loss in America over the last 6 years. So you earn it. But you can't go on shows of avowed anti-Semites or racists. You cannot constantly vote against Holocaust remembrances and these sorts of things, or have voted against protecting our children from really, really bad actors, and then think somehow you're going to explain it away in a general election in a state where we have not won the top of the ticket in a decade. Democrat senator, Democrat governor, Democrat secretary of state, Democrat attorney general. Electability is remarkably important because, heaven forbid, we become Virginia, where you've lost the legislature, you've lost the governor, and all of a sudden it starts to become the socialist paradise. They take away ESAs, they take away the flat tax rate, they take away the election integrity that we've now built into many of our laws, and all those go away in the first couple of days if we lose this legislature and we re-elect Katie Hobbs. It's in some ways it's not about David Schweikert and Andy Biggs. It's electability. We have to win if we want to protect conservatism in this state.
Those are some pretty specific allegations.
Yeah.
How do you respond?
So let's take the electability part first, because that's really what he's claiming and really running on. And so the problem with his statement is there's nobody more competitive with Katie Hobbs in every polling scenario that's been out there. And we're talking dozens of polls. He's never polled as close as me, and I'm the only Republican that's actually polled higher than Katie Hobbs. So you look at that and you say, well, if your premise is right, then you should be beating Biggs in those polls, because those are generic polls, including usually the proper ratio of independent, Republican, and Democrat. The second thing is, he doesn't mention the record I have both when I was in the state legislature of working across the aisle and having a steady, strong leadership that is able to work across the aisle. He doesn't bother to mention anything like the fact that the current minority leader, who was the head of the Black Caucus in Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, and I worked together on passing a bill that was anti-corruption. And it's called the Jack Act. And so we worked on that. Or that fact that Kirsten Sinema and I have a very warm friendship and have worked together over many things, not the least of which was the right to try legislation. Or the fact that Senator John McCain and I worked together on the Ashland Mike Amber Alert and Indian Country bill. By the way, both of those bills, right to try and the Amber Alert bill, have literally saved hundreds of lives.
You bring up an interesting point, and I think some people may say, well, Trump supports you. You've worked with him on many issues, and they may say, try to paint you as too far right. But you bring up an interesting point that you've been in politics long enough where you have these other relationships and you've worked on these other issues with a lot of different people.
No, that's exactly right, and that's the point. You can try to negate that, but when we talk to people and we get our message out, this is what I've done. This is who I work with. The fact that I passed legislation unanimously out of the House of Representatives that I co-sponsor with Democrats, that where I'm the lead sponsor, or we bring out the bills that protect children. So I just had a bill pass out called the See Safe Act to protect children against sexual exploitation online, that passed out unanimously. You have to, when you start talking about those things, people get it. The other thing that if you look at it strictly from a perspective of Republican Democrat point of view, then maybe he's right. But I don't think people look like that. Look at things that way. If you look at what the issues that we face, I think the independent voter, the middle of the road voter, they feel the same way about issues. They want to have affordability. They're looking for the same thing you and I are. If you're Republican, I don't know, but they're looking for the same thing that Republicans and conservatives are. They want to have affordable housing. They want to be able to afford to live their lives. They want the American dream that so many people think that they're not going to have anymore. They want that. They want to be able to get good jobs. They want to be able to take their family on vacations. They want education for their children that will allow them to get ahead, and they want to be safe in doing that. Those are the fundamental aspects of restoring the American dream to Arizona that I'm talking about. And guess what? It resonates dramatically with independent voters, and that's demonstrated in the polling.
All right, so we want to get into your plan for affordability, in depth in a minute. Let's get back to some of these accusations, though. Yeah. David Schweikert talking about that you did appear on a show hosted by, I believe the guy's name was Stu Peters.
Yeah.
And that he's been criticized for anti-Semitic statements. Was it a mistake to go on that show?
Well, it's my understanding that he didn't come out as an anti-Semite till after I'd been on there, and when he and I were talking, we were talking about budgeting, federal budgets. So if anything, I should have done a little bit more homework, but I don't think anybody knew that was Stu Peters' position when I went on to talk about that. And so I think that's kind of an unfair attack, especially when you look at my record supporting anti-Semitic attacks. I mean, that's
not supporting them, but fighting against
supporting. Yes, that's correct.
Right,
yes, yeah, fighting against anti-Semitic attacks, and this notion that I'm anti-Semitic is absolutely one of the most ludicrous, insane arguments ever. David admitted that we've known each other for 30 years. He never bothered to say, Andy, you got an anti-Semite problem, until he decided to run against me for governor. That tells me that he knows that he's lying. I hate to say it that way because I don't want to take it that way because I'm trying to unify the party. But it's hard to unify the party when someone says slanderous, defamatory statements that they know are untrue.
Okay. Celeste, we're going to keep watching for people's comments. If you want to join the conversation, we've got another, I think, a whole next segment, another 15 minutes here.
And we have a couple of questions for you, too, from some of our viewers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right.
We're glad you came back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, and I know you're going to stick with us. We have to take a quick break real quick. We're going to show all of you a mystery camera, kind of a preview. We're going to do the big reveal at 10:30 this morning. But let's go ahead and show that. By the way, our new background.
45. Celeste, let's continue our conversation with candidate for governor, current Congressman Andy Biggs.
Yeah, Andy. Yeah, thank you for sharing some time with us. Let's jump in on the, and there's a couple of ballot measures that are potentially in the works for Arizona voters when it comes to ESAs. Yeah. So they're a little confusing with the wording and things like that, but I know that you're a big proponent. How do you plan to, and assuming that you are elected governor, how do you plan to navigate the waters of that? Because we have Arizona is a leading force when it comes to school choice in this country.
Yeah, there is no other state that has the same kind of expansive school choice that Arizona has. Although Florida is getting close to doing something similar, some of the Midwestern states as well. So the critique of the ESA program has been that there's been fraud there. But what I find interesting is the reason we know there's fraud there is they've actually caught some fraudsters and stopped that fraud. Mm-hmm. And that's really, when you take it, whether it's ESA or whether it's Medicaid, where we know we have $2.8 or $6 billion, whatever Chris Mays said we had, and we've got the Indian Health Service, which is $2.8 to $8 billion, somewhere in that range. We got to find the fraudsters. You stop the fraud, you arrest the fraudsters, you prosecute the fraudsters. Mm-hmm. When that happens, fraud starts going away and you save money. So that's the way you navigate it. But look, I'm going to defend the ESA movement. I'm going to defend parental choice in education. I think parents want that choice. I think it's best to focus on the child, the parent, and the teacher. Those are the three components that really drive education, and having that choice is actually good.
Why do you think? I actually have not really seen polling yet on where we stand with these initiatives that are coming out and ballot issues, but people who are opposed to the ESA program are pretty passionate about that. What do you think about their arguments?
Well, I'm not sure I understand all of their arguments, because the argument that I hear most is fraud. But the ESA program has fraud, and they're actually working on removing it. But
also they are saying it's hurting public schools.
How so? I mean, so Ron, what I think they're getting at, they're saying, it impacts the funding. Mm-hmm. But when you think about the funding, ESAs get roughly 70% of the funding that goes to traditionals. Mm-hmm. So if you were looking at it, this is from education associations. If you're going to get an ESA or a charter or something like that, you might be getting $12,000 per pupil in Arizona. But if you're going to traditional, it's in excess of $15,000, almost $16,000 per pupil. That's a pretty huge disparity there. It's about a 70% of that. So I think they have a tough time defending the funding issue because they do get the funding.
Okay.
I think the difficult thing with the ESA and the school funding and the school choice, like for people who have the argument that maybe we should remove the funding. Interesting about school choice in Arizona, when you use an ESA, you have to be able to drive your child to the school. You have to be, in a lot of ways, you're responsible for the transportation. So for a lot of families, I'm sure, honestly, most Arizonans would take advantage of it if they could get their child to the school, because I think that for some families with children with special needs, maybe their neighborhood school isn't working for them.
Right. The way to think about that is where we've seen, and there's been studies, for instance, out of Milwaukee, where that was going to be the common argument against charters. Now, Milwaukee got rid of charters and they brought them back because the outcry was so great. What they found is that it didn't matter what the demographic was. Mm-hmm. If the parents wanted their child at a different school, they would find a way to get them there. The other thing I would tell you is, for instance, there's 100,000 roughly ESA students, but you have another 130,000 roughly charter students. Many charters have transportation. Mm-hmm. They provide that transportation, can get you there. With the ESAs, I think that there's efforts to try to get them so kids can get to where they need to go and parents can work that out. I happen to know of some folks that tell me they've organized carpools.
Yeah, there's a lot of carpools that are organized.
Why hasn't the party connected in the last couple of election cycles with voters? I mean, as you heard from Congressman Schweikert there, we have a Democrat governor, Democrat attorney general, Democrat U.S. Senator number 1, Democrat U.S. Senator number 2. What are the Republicans doing wrong?
I prefer to think of what did we do right,
Okay.
and so I'll give you that. I'll give you that. I'm an optimist.
Glass half full.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Being glass half empty, but okay, go ahead.
It's very odd. Ron's usually not like this.
I was going to say, Ron, why are you such a downer today, Ron? They're not used to seeing that out of you. But here's the way.
Asking the tough question.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Here's the way I look at it. So think of the 2024 election. So, and I'm going to give you some data points that may seem boring, but I think they're important. So if you look at the 2024 election, people did not think Donald Trump was going to win Arizona. If you looked at all the national pollsters and pundits, Arizona's not going to go for Trump. Trump won it by 5.5 points. That's the biggest margin of any battleground state. 160,000 plus votes difference between him and Kamala Harris. We lost the next race down. And even that, out of whatever several million cast, it was a 40,000 vote differential was the final official tally. But then the Republicans won everything else. We actually expanded the state legislature. The 2022 election, which did not have Trump on the ballot and did not have a presidential contest, we lost those top three, as you say. And we lost one of the senators. So we lost the Senate and the top three in 22. We lost the Senate race. Excuse me, that was the governor's race, I'm sorry, in 22. We lost another Senate race in 24. But we won everything else in 24. And we won everything else except for those top three.
Why is that, do you think?
In 24?
Yeah, why did we lose those top state races?
In 22.
No, in 22. Yeah. I just don't think we had a great ground game necessarily. And when we get the message out, we have a ground game, we can win. I want to give you one last data point. I'll try to be quick about this. There were 133 voting precincts in 2022 that went for Katie Hobbs. This is analysis we've done. They went for Katie Hobbs. Those 133, and that's I'm specifically dealing with those 133. Of those, they went for Katie Hobbs. In 24, they went for Donald Trump. That's a huge swing. And the average swing was, most of those were in Maricopa County, the average swing was about 8 to 9% moving from Katie Hobbs to vote for Donald Trump. That's a big swing. There are 11 precincts that went for Katie Hobbs in 22 that went for Donald Trump by almost 50% in 24. Those are the precincts that I think are going to help decide this election.
What are the biggest issues? You've got a primary race here. What are your biggest concerns about if Katie Hobbs is governor for 4 more years that you believe you would do differently?
Well, let's just talk about housing affordability first off the bat. What did she do? She imposed a moratorium on 2 of the fastest growing cities in the country, and what that does is that drives prices up because now you've reduced your stock, and that was in place for 3 years before a court struck it down and said you didn't have authority to do that. That means that we're now 3 more years behind in the housing stock and building, right? And so that scarcity helps drive up costs of homes, and that means that the American dream is in peril, and that's the issue with Katie Hobbs. She's mismanaged the water situation, in my opinion, and again, you got 2 hours. We'll talk about water, but it was myself working with Greg Stanton that we got $350 million released from the federal government to go to the lower basin states to help take care of try to mitigate our water problem that we have. We're involved in. I am involved in leading the delegation and trying to help with the negotiations that are going on right now between the lower basin states and reclamation, and then the upper basin states.
If I could ask a question about housing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people care, obviously, on Main Street about gas, groceries, housing. We're one of the most, I think, top 10 most expensive cities, the Phoenix metro area, to live in around the nation. How do we make housing more affordable? Is it like immigration where there's a bunch of different things that need to work together, like to find, there's not one magic bullet? How do we make housing more affordable for people so they can achieve the American dream?
Well, first of all, right now, it's always permitting is about 40% of the cost of building a house, and we're reducing this to, because it takes so long to get permitting. Some cases 1 year. From plan to dirt, it's about 4 years.
Wow.
That means that only big companies can actually afford the carrying cost of buying the land, hanging on to it, and waiting for that to work out. In my opinion, we need to make sure that you have the availability of land. You have to make sure that water is available, and you have to make sure that you're going to have power available. All of those things go into reducing or increasing the cost of building a home. But you also have this bureaucratic stasis in many respects, which is the permitting requirements. So all of those go hand in glove, and all of those are workable and are solvable, quite frankly. And I believe we'll get them solved actually fairly quickly.
Let me squeeze another one in. This is from one of our viewers, Tara, who writes in, please ask him why he voted for Medicaid and SNAP cuts, voted against infrastructure investment that Arizona needs, and voted to object to Arizona's certified electoral votes. Would you, as governor, put Arizona first or loyalty first? But how do you answer her specifics?
Yeah, so she's got some specifics that largely the first 2/3 of her question focus on the one big beautiful bill, and that in that particular bill, it provides to Arizona alone $1.4 billion worth of tax savings to the working class people in Arizona. And when she talks about Medicaid cuts, what that bill focuses on is only the people who actually qualify for Medicaid should be receiving Medicaid. In other words, the move to address fraud that we have in our system, which, as I think back to what Chris May said, is about $2.5 billion.
Hold that thought. We got a break. All right. So did you want to wrap up your point here regarding some of Tara's questions there?
Did we hit all of her questions?
Well, she was talking about, I guess her concern is that you will continue to be her question put like this, is it going to be Arizona first? Would it be party loyalty first? Let me build on that question for a second. Are there any areas that you have disagreed with President Trump and how he's run things?
Yeah. So first of all, the answer to the question, I am an Arizona first guy. That's why I want to come back to the state. I think we're moving in the wrong direction. I think we need to fix it. Look, let's take the FISA, for instance. FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I've worked with people like, again, across the aisle, Pramila Jayapal, Jerry Nadler, and now even Jamie Raskin, who he and I clash like this. But I'm working to get that reformed. President Trump initially said he wanted reforms, and he said, I don't want reforms. I've been working for 10 years to get reforms in FISA. And I called him literally a couple weeks ago. Many times we've talked about FISA, and I said, no, look, Mr. President, this is how they spied on you. They're spying on Americans. And so I disagreed with him because he wanted it clean, and now he's content to have some reforms. So that's where I've disagreed, and where by pushing we've seen a little bit of change.
Okay. All right. We want to know. I mean, and a few other questions. Do you play pickleball?
Who asked that question?
There's somebody in the chat talking about pickleball. Did they see you on a court?
No. Look, I've not had time to pick up pickleball.
What do you do in your spare time? Like, what is you're running for governor? I know you're very busy. What do you do to take a load off?
What is spare time? I'm just wondering if you tell me what that is. If I get a chance for spare time, I have a band. But I'll just go pick up my guitar, or I'll sit down at the piano.
What kind of riff? What are we talking about? What kind of music? Cover band type stuff?
Yeah, so the band we do cover band stuff from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the aughts.
And when's your next gig? Do we pay like a concert fee, or do you do weddings?
I think we're doing another one in October. We did one in May.
Nice.
Would you be willing to be the warm-up act for like an Elton John if he ever were to return, or a Paul McCartney, some of the bigger names?
Absolutely, I would.
I was thinking maybe here in studio.
Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Yeah, I don't know. You guys could pay our fee.
That could be true.
I'm just kidding you.
Do you know who the last guest was who actually brought in a guitar on our morning show?
Who is that?
This goes back many years. Glenn Campbell.
Is that right?
When he lived here in town, he was a guest with us, and he came in with his guitar. It was amazing.
Awesome.
All right, one last question for you.
Yeah.
How many grandkids do you have?
I have 12 with 2 on the way.
What do you learn from them? I was
God.
just mentioning to you, my 10-year-old granddaughter Ava Jane. She wanted to have a pool party. It was 110, but we went ahead and did it. What from a family standpoint?
Well, I think we learn. We all learn patience, and we all learn to get along, and that's really important. I mean, that's what. I'm always reminding them, hey, let's not argue over here. Let's resolve this. Let's resolve this peacefully if we can.
Okay.
So, is that what you say also with all the lawmakers? Let's resolve this peacefully.
This reminds me of a family fight just the other day. Well, plus it tests your memorization skills if you're going to have 12 grandkids.
Yeah, I'll never forget their names. I can tell you that.
Well, congratulations with 2 on the way.
Well, we like to have a little fun toward the end of the interview. And you did definitely give us plenty of your time here and a lot of answers.
Congressman, thank you so much.
It.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the time. Good to be with you guys.
It.
Good to see you again. And Ron, cheer up, brother. It's just sad for you.
I'll try to work on him for you.
Thanks, Celeste.